Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's 8 days after Hurricane Katrina slammed into the Gulf Coast, just a little bit east of New Orleans, Louisiana. And we were not in studio last week, but been, of course, on the radio reporting on this tragedy as it's unfolded. But we're now in studio, and the evidence is conclusive. The evidence is conclusive. There is a lot of evidence pointing towards someone blowing up different sections of the levees. Because remember, the Category 5 hurricane slowed to 4, went around New Orleans, then dumped its water supposedly north of New Orleans over Mississippi and northern Louisiana. It then flooded Lake Pontchartrain, broke the levees, came through, deluged the city under 10 feet of water, a city 20 feet on average under sea level. But I say there's a lot of evidence showing that happened. We are getting that report from very serious sources, a lot of witnesses, emergency management people. But regardless, I'm not going there because we cannot prove it 110%. What we can totally prove is that FEMA has cut police communication lines all over that state, that FEMA, since day one, blocked local police, sheriff's departments from the parishes from bringing in food and water. That FEMA wanted to demonstrate that martial law is a good thing, so they had to engineer it where the city would first break down. And the people didn't start rioting and having problems until 3 days in. There are small bands out looting. But we're all being sold on the image now of the regular army, the National Guard with them, gun confiscations, mass roundups. Why, the government's got to get tougher. We got to give FEMA more power. I've interviewed colonels who are experts in emergency management. They say this whole thing's a fraud. I interviewed one of the counterterrorism specialists in the Reagan administration. He was also the deputy head, the number 2 man of the Department of the Treasury, Paul Craig Roberts. He said it's clear they've engineered this, and they've done nothing to stop it, to sell us now on a total police state takeover of America. But I think while we show you these images, the best thing for me to do is simply read you an article that was put together by Paul Joseph Watson and myself today. FEMA deliberately sabotaging hurricane relief efforts. Multiple parishes revolt, use armed guards to defend against feds. Let me kind of start at where we are today, and then I'll go back over what has really happened in the Gulf Coast area. Because clearly the government knew what would happen if a big hurricane hit. Clearly they cut the funding. Clearly they now have accentuated the crisis to make it an even bigger problem. So again, when they, quote, screw up, they get more funds. That's been proven. But back it up, Mike. Let's play the images and the news articles while I read this article. And we have 3 articles today that we wrote, myself, Paul Watson, and Steve Watson. FEMA deliberately sabotaging hurricane relief efforts. Then there's this one. Former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury on New Orleans. Americans are being brainwashed. He called it a Nazi takeover. Now, this is one of the most conservative men in America. Do you understand, folks? Economist. FEMA executive orders pave the way for emergency police state hell by Steve Watson. You want to read the actual executive orders, but to be able to use these executive orders, they've got to make sure the crisis gets bad enough, then they set a permanent precedence for all of this. So while I read these articles, play those still images and articles for folks. FEMA deliberately sabotaging hurricane relief efforts. Multiple parishes revolt, use armed guards to defend against feds. Numerous credible sources have come forward with examples of how the Federal Emergency Management Agency is deliberately sabotaging Hurricane Katrina relief efforts in New Orleans. This represents a ruthless attempt on the part of FEMA to impose a federal takeover of the area for their own benefit, aimed at amid a tragedy that has already claimed anything up to 10,000 lives. Again, their business is crises, so they on purpose worsened it. The mainstream media has picked up on this story, but is whitewashing it as just another failure of the federal government in detailing and dealing with the crisis. In reality, the actions are part of a coordinated campaign to deepen the scope of the disaster in order to force through bumper funding increases for FEMA. Jefferson Parish President Aaron Bouchard, we're going to play a clip of later, appeared on Meet the Press Sunday and broke down in tears as he described FEMA's criminal activities. Quote, "We have been abandoned by our own country. Hurricane Katrina will go down in history as one of the worst storms ever to hit American coast. But the aftermath of Katrina will go down as one of the worst abandonments of Americans on American soil ever in U.S. history." Continuing. This is a quote. And this is basically the mayor of the county where New Orleans is based. "We had Walmart deliver 3 trucks of water, trailer trucks of water. FEMA turned them back. They said, we don't need them. This was a week ago, or last Tuesday. FEMA, we had 1,000 gallons of diesel fuel on a Coast Guard vessel docked in my parish. The Coast Guard said, come get the fuel right away. When we got there with our trucks, they got a word. FEMA says, don't give you the fuel. Yesterday, FEMA comes in and cuts all of our emergency communications lines. They cut them without notice. Our sheriff, Harry Lee, goes back in. He reconnects the lines. He posts armed guards on the lines and says, no one is getting near these lines. We have 2 separate other parish sheriffs who caught FEMA cutting lines. And yes, folks, I've got the reports. They caught FEMA breaking levees. Oh, my God. And this is a week ago, and this is yesterday. It's not to let the water back out. That's like the Three Stooges, as my friend said, where Moe knocks a hole in the bottom of a boat, so Larry screws another hole in to let the water out. Folks, this is a black op operation. It is now mainstream news. I heard this from people in New Orleans. I had police calling into my show who have resigned over this, saying it's the government's running the operation. I didn't want to believe it last week. I reserved judgment. Now we have confirmed that FEMA has been jamming police and fire department radios the entire time. Since day one, they had special forces teams in there jamming everything. And how these men follow orders to do this. Like I said, I had a colonel on today, and he said, well, it might get confusing if there's too much communication. The people have all got their phones. It's not communication. It's that they don't want the police to be able to do anything. So, again, there's a total collapse. This has all been war-gamed out. The National Guard can't do it because they're all in Iraq. The regular army comes in. Oh, we got to give FEMA unlimited power, give up total control of our lives to them, then we'll be safe. Problem, reaction, solution. Why would FEMA, an organization supposedly tasked with helping in a time of crisis, deliberately cut police communication lines? This is a blatant example of sabotage and a sick push to make the disaster worse. In carrying out these actions, FEMA are no better than the animals who shot at rescue workers in helicopters. And you can watch the video of the Meet the Press interview. The mission of FEMA has never, in reality, been to bring people food and water and help in times of crisis. Alex Jones has attended numerous FEMA drills where the whole point of the exercise is to round people up, break up families, and institute a brutal police state crackdown. FEMA needs to create a chaotic atmosphere in New Orleans so they can legitimize what they are doing. We now have multiple reports of police being ordered to guard key infrastructures in order to defend them from FEMA federal agents. Sheriffs in numerous different counties are guarding highways to keep FEMA out. This has even been on Fox and CNN. FEMA is being treated as the enemy because they are sabotaging key facilities in an effort to intentionally worsen the already desperate scenes of horror in New Orleans.